The 1905 World Series between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Athletics. This one is the second World Series, as no series was played the previous year in 1904. The New York Giants, who had won the National League pennant, boycotted the series against the returning American League champions, the Boston Americans. Giants manager John McGraw and owner John T. Brush apparently thought themselves above playing the Junior League. Brush definitely looking like a little pervert who hates the World Series here. To many, this read as the Giants being afraid to lose to the Boston Americans, who'd beaten the National League in the first World Series in the previous year. This was not especially popular with the fans or the players, who didn't like missing the extra payday. So in 1905, the New York Giants were all in on playing the Athletics in the World Series. And they did so in style, breaking out some new all-black uniforms for the occasion. Quite intimidating. Notably for the Athletics, led by the legendary manager Connie Mack, they were short on pitching going into the series as their staff ace, the ever-eccentric Rube Waddell, had injured his shoulder in a tussle with fellow pitcher Andy Coakley. Apparently Waddell was not a fan of Coakley wearing a straw hat after Labor Day and attempted to confiscate it and injured himself during the horseplay. Game 1 was played in Columbia Park in Philadelphia and featured the pitching matchup of Giants ace Christy Mathewson versus the Athletics' Eddie Plank. The Giants missed on a couple of scoring opportunities early in the game. In the first inning, they left two on base as catcher Roger Bresnahan was hit by a pitch, and 2 outs later, Dan McGann hit a double to put runners on second and third. But Eddie Plank struck out Sam Mertz to end the inning. In the second inning, the Giants left 3 runners on. Consecutive bunt signals by Art Devlin and Billy Gilbert put 2 on, and the runners immediately executed a double steal. Bresnahan was intentionally walked to load the bases, but then Eddie Plank forced a ground out to get out of the jam. The Giants scored first in the 5th inning. Christy Mathewson led off with a base hit, and then Roger Bresnahan hit into a force to get the runner at second. Bresnahan, who was one of the faster catchers in the league, who actually was the leadoff hitter for the Giants, then stole second base and scored on a single by outfielder and vaudeville star Turkey Mike Donlin. Donlin ended up on second on the throw home. Dan McGann was handed an intentional pass, and then a ground rule double by Sam Mertz scored another run to make it 2-0 Giants. The Giants added another run in the 9th when Billy Gilbert singled, Matty bunted to move him over, and Roger Bresnahan drove in Gilbert with a single. This ended up the final score as the Giants took Game 1 3-0. The Athletics only managed 4 hits and never more than 1 in an inning, 3 of which were doubles by Danny Murphy, Harry Davis, and Ossie Schreckengast. I love how they have Ossie Schreckengast listed as just Shrek on this baseball card. That's great. Christy Mathewson with a 4-hit shutout, 6 strikeouts and no walks, an absolute gem in Game 1 as the New York Giants take the lead in the series 1-0. Game 2 of the 1905 World Series between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Athletics. We're switching over to the legendary Polo Grounds in Manhattan, New York, with the Giants leading the series 1-0. The pitching matchup for the day featured Charles Chief Bender for the Athletics, and for the New York Giants, the Iron Man, Joe McGinnity, a couple of Hall of Famers. The pitchers kept things pretty quiet until the 3rd inning, when A's catcher Ossie Schreckengast grounded to second base, but the throw was dropped by first baseman Dan McGann for an error. Chief Bender then bunted the runners forward, and a ground out by Topsy Hartzell moved Schreck over to third. A single by Briss Lord is the only hit it took to score the first run of the game to make the score Philadelphia 1, New York 0. That's 1 unearned run on the board for the A's. The pitchers' duel continued into the Philadelphia half of the 8th inning, when Ossie Schreckengast led off with a base hit. With 2 outs and a runner on first, left fielder Topsy Hartzell fired a double into left. Schreckengast attempted to score all the way from first base and was successful when Giants catcher Roger Bresnahan dropped the ball on the catch for an error. The second run of the inning came after a Briss Lord single scored Hartzell to make the score 3-0 Philadelphia, with 2 more unearned runs. The Giants' best scoring opportunities came in the following 2 innings. They stranded 2 runners in the 8th after an Art Devlin single, followed by an error by Athletic shortstop Monty Cross that allowed Roger Bresnahan to reach safely. Now that's a mustache. Hell yeah. Chief Bender then got George Brown to ground out to end the inning. The Giants stranded 2 more in the bottom of the 9th with a tying run at the plate. Another error this time by second baseman Danny Murphy allowed Turkey Mike Donlin to reach safely. Donlin pictured here with fellow vaudeville star Mabel Height. Dan McGann then walked to put a second runner on with no outs. But Bender easily worked himself out of the jam on 3 consecutive outs, on a pop-up and 2 grounders to second base to put the lid on the shutout. Chief Bender allowing only 4 hits with 9 strikeouts and 3 walks in this masterful complete game shutout. Joe McGinnity fairly sharp for the Giants as well, with only 5 hits allowed over 8 innings. All 3 of the Athletics' runs unearned due to fielding errors. Red Ames pitching one scoreless inning in relief with one hit and one walk in what will be the only relief appearance of the entire series. Excellent pitching on both sides, with the win being determined unfortunately by poor fielding by the New York Giants. The Athletics win 3-0 to tie the series at one game apiece as we head back to Philadelphia for Game 3. Game 3 of the 1905 World Series, the Philadelphia Athletics versus the New York Giants. We return to Columbia Park in Philadelphia for the third game, with the series tied at one game apiece. The day's pitching matchup featured Christy Mathewson for the New York Giants, available after a whopping 2 days of rest due to the travel day, and Andy Coakley for the Philadelphia Athletics. Scoring action started in the first inning when Andy Coakley hit the first batter of the game with a pitch. After getting the next runner to pop up, consecutive singles by Mike Donlin and Dan McGann score the first run. Sam Mertz then reached on an error by second baseman Danny Murphy, which put the second run across to make the score 2-0 Giants. Coakley managed to get out of the inning with a double play, leaving two on base. The score remained 2-0 until the fifth inning when the Giants broke out with a big frame. After a one-out walk to Roger Bresnahan, a base hit by George Brown, and an intentional walk to Mike Donlin, a Dan McGann ground ball was fumbled by Danny Murphy for his second error of the game, causing a run to score and keeping the bases loaded for Sam Mertz. A Mertz single to right field scored the second run of the inning, and the bases were still loaded with one out. Bill Dahlen grounded into a fielder's choice for the second out at second base, but a third run scored on the play. Dahlen then stole second base, and an Art Devlin single drove in the fourth run of the inning, bringing Bad Bill Dahlen to third. The Giants then proceeded to do the most Giants thing possible with a double steal, with Bill Dahlen stealing home base to make the score 7-0 Giants. We have the makings of a blowout here. Coakley got the final out on a fly ball to end this nightmare inning, but not after giving up 5 runs. The seventh inning was the only inning in which the Athletics got more than one hit, 2 of the total 4 hits they would manage in the game. After a single by Harry Davis, Lave Cross hit into a double play, so they didn't even manage to have 2 base runners on at once. Sox Sabold, who is the grumpiest and most sinister-looking guy I think I've ever seen, followed up with a single, but a ground out by Danny Murphy ended the inning with no runs scored. The Giants added insult to injury in the ninth with 2 more runs. With 2 outs, George Brown hit a single and stole second base. Turkey Mike Donlin followed with a walk, and Brown stole third base as well, sending Donlin to second on the third Danny Murphy fielding error of the game. Oh no. Dan McGann followed up with a double to score both runners. And that was the final score, 9-0 Giants in a blowout game with only 3 of the runs scored earned, assisted by 4 Athletics errors, 3 by second baseman Murphy. Christy Mathewson with a 4-hit shutout featuring 8 strikeouts and only 1 walk. What else would you expect from this guy? It looks like catcher Ossie Schreckengast of the Athletics may have shouldered some of the blame for the loss, as he was pulled for a replacement catcher, Doc Powers, in the 6th and then sat out for the remainder of the series. The New York Giants now lead the series 2-1 as we head back to the Polo Grounds for Game 4. Game 4 of the 1905 World Series between the Philadelphia Athletics and the New York Giants. We zigzag back to the Polo Grounds in Manhattan, New York for Game 4 for an ace pitching duel, this time between Eddie Plank of the Athletics and Joe McGinnity, the Iron Man, once again for the Giants. The game remained scoreless through 3 innings with only a few base runners stranded for each team. The Giants managed to get 2 on in the third on singles by Roger Bresnahan and George Brown, but were unable to score on Eddie Plank. The Athletics got 2 of their own runners on in the fourth with singles by Danny Murphy and Monty Cross, but Joe McGinnity proved just as unflinching on the mound and stranded both runners. In the bottom half of the fourth, the Giants managed to put together a single run in a sequence of small ball type plays. Sam Mertz got on base after an error by shortstop Monty Cross. After Plank got the next batter to fly out, Art Devlin laid down a bunt to move Mertz to second base. Billy Gilbert followed with a 2-out single, and Sam Mertz took 2 bases and beat the throw home to score what would be the only run of the game. New York Giants 1, Philadelphia Athletics 0. The Athletics fumbled their best chance to score in the 8th inning when a walk to Topsy Hartzell preceded a 2-out single by Lave Cross, sending Hartzell to third. Lave Cross doesn't really have the aura that his brother Monty has. That mustache really does a lot of heavy lifting. Sox Sabold then followed by striking out and stranding 2 on base to end the inning and the Athletics scoring opportunity. A complete pitcher's battle here in Game 4, a 1-0 shutout in favor of the Giants. Iron Man McGinnity pitching a 5-hit, no-run gem of a game. Eddie Plank similarly sharp with only 5 hits allowed, but that one unearned run due to a fielding error cost the game. The Athletics still with no earned runs in this series, and the Giants in position to win it all with a 3-1 lead as we remain in New York for Game 5. Game 5 of the 1905 World Series at the Polo Grounds in Manhattan, New York. The Philadelphia Athletics are on the edge of elimination as the New York Giants come into the game leading the series 3-1. The day's pitching matchup featured Chief Bender for the Athletics and Christy Mathewson for the Giants, who had already pitched 2 shutouts earlier in the series. The Athletics coming into this game still without having scored an earned run in the series, with their only runs being the 3 unearned in their Game 2 victory. Game 5 drew over 24,000 in attendance, for an average of 6,000 more attendees per game than the first World Series in 1903, making the 1905 World Series a massive success. Pitching was tough and stingy in this series on both sides, with minimal activity on the bases. The Athletics had stranded a single runner in the first, third, and fifth innings, while the Giants had left one on in the third. The Giants struck first in the fifth inning. Sam Mertz and Bill Dolan started the inning by drawing consecutive walks. Art Devlin bunted both runners forward, and a fly ball to left field by Billy Gilbert scored Sam Mertz on the sacrifice fly. Bad Bill Dolan was thrown out trying to take third on the play to end the inning. Giants 1, Athletics 0. The Giants threatened again in the 6th when Roger Bresnahan and George Brown hit consecutive singles with 1 out, but Chief Bender got the next 2 batters on a fly ball and a strikeout respectively to strand both runners. The Athletics only had 2 innings in which they had more than 1 hit, but never had more than 1 runner on base at a time for the entirety of the game. They managed to hit 2 singles in an inning twice, but base hits were interrupted by a double play in the 2nd and a pickoff at first base in the 6th. The Giants scored again in the 8th. Pitcher Christy Mathewson helped his own cause by drawing a walk and advancing to third on a double by Roger Bresnahan. A ground ball off the bat of George Brown and right back to pitcher Chief Bender allowed Mathewson to score. New York Giants 2, Philadelphia Athletics 0. Matty came back out to the mound in the top of the 9th and clinched the championship for the Giants with 3 straight groundouts. The New York Giants win Game 5 by a score of 2-0. Christy Mathewson with a 5-hit shutout with no walks for an outrageous 3 shutout victories in the series and a 0.00 ERA, one of the all-time best performances in World Series history and the definite MVP of the 1905 series. Chief Bender also allowing only 5 hits in Game 5, but 3 batters reaching on walks cost the game for the A's, as both runners that scored had reached due to base on balls. Bender was good, but Matty was perfect. All 4 of the Athletics' losses were shutouts, with their only run scored being unearned due to errors. The New York Giants won the second ever World Series 4-1, and their pitching staff allowed no earned runs, a feat that may never be replicated in the World Series.